Silver Cross in Old Friends and New Enemies. The area was shrouded in darkness, artificial moonlight being the only source of light. Shadows seemed to move only to reveal nothing once one looked at them. The sniper mare had camouflaged herself with mud and leaves before climbing onto the tree she was now perched on. The night vision scope on her rifle should have provided her with a definite advantage, or so she thought. Instead, it was more of a hindrance because its range was only about 20 meters. Everything that lay beyond that was one blurry wall of grainy green. Still, she decided to rely on the short range of vision it provided her. She had no other choice, really. The artificial moonlight was not bright enough to spot anything. Had it not been for her night vision goggles, she wouldn't even have found this tree. Her radio came to life with a soft click indicating that some pony wanted to speak with her.
Gunnery Sergeant Ironjaw calling Private Godspeed. Everything all right on your end, Godspeed?
The deep voice of her CO came over the radio. Godspeed pressed a button on her rifle to answer.
Everything quiet here, sir. Are you sure she'll come this way?
No, I'm not, but it's better to have you sit there doing nothing than have no pony there and have a place for her to slip through our lines.
Understood, sir. Any sightings so far?
Godspeed's voice quivered a little. The mud with which she had camouflaged herself was starting to dry and itch on her coat.
No confirmed ones. Gamma team reported they saw something in Sector 88, but they weren't able to confirm anything. All they accomplished was to waste a few magazines of ammo.
Her CO sighed, most likely knowing that their opponent was testing them to find a way to break through. Just as she wanted to reply, a sound in the darkness caught her attention. It was just the breaking of a twig and the rustling of some leaves, but it was enough to make her mane stand on end. The Earth Pony mare tapped the button on her rifle 4 times to let her CO know that she had to be silent and that she required immediate reinforcements. 2 short bursts of static in her ear told her that he understood and that help was on its way. Godspeed hated fighting in jungles. A sniper like her was almost useless in a setting like this, since her targets had way too much cover from her shots and were hard to spot in the first place. Nonetheless, she spotted an eye and a few hairs of mane looking directly at her from behind a tree. Not a second later, a shot rang out from her rifle, chipping off a large chunk of bark from the tree but missing her target. It was already gone. The swaying plants that her immense speed left behind told her the direction the pony had run off to, and she didn't like it one bit. The mare, who was their opponent in this exercise, was heading straight for the tree she was sitting on. Godspeed tried to get a lock on the mare, but she was moving much too fast. She shot 3 more bullets into the path of the pony, but her target just dodged them as if they were moving in slow motion. A moment later, something flashed at the base of the tree, and she heard a sound as if something was sliced in two. At first, Speed didn't know what had happened, until the tree started to fall. I had just used Luna's saw to fell a pretty big tree to get rid of a sniper pony that was perched on top of it, when I heard the click of a cocked hammer to my right. Quickly turning around, I saw the mare, bleeding from a wound on her forehead, pressing the barrel of her rifle to the underside of my chin.
"Game over,"
the mare drawled before her eyes rolled up to the whites and she fainted. It was that moment that I thought I had overdone it. Berrywing insisted that I trained with these soldiers while they used live ammunition, but I didn't want to kill any of them. Nor could they seriously hurt me. Their bullets had been enchanted to hurt me as if they had penetrated, but not to actually wound me. Everything else they hit was not so lucky, however. I put a hoof to the mare's neck, checking her pulse. To my relief, she was still alive. A tree branch must have hit her when the tree fell. It was quite impressive that she had been able to stand it all after that. Several loud clicking noises from the bushes around me shook me out of my reverie. Several soldiers had surrounded their target, their assault rifles trained on her head. The perking up of her ears told them that they had been noticed, and all 24 of them opened fire simultaneously. Their target, however, didn't move. Her coat began to glow white-hot and became a glowing beacon in the dark. The bullets aimed at her head melted and evaporated inches from her face just before the trap sprang. 4 unicorns forming a rectangle around the mare started to cast a single spell. A wave of extreme cold erupted from their horns in perfect unison and shot towards the mare. The wave of heat emanating from the mare intensified, but so did the wave of cold. The struggle lasted only a few seconds, but then the mare was encased in a hollow sphere of coldness. Sergeant Ironjaw stepped out of the darkness to stand in front of his prisoner.
"You almost broke through this time,"
he praised the mare, who was still glowing like a second sun in the darkness.
"Almost isn't good enough, so, and please drop that sphere now, I'm already starting to feel cold,"
the mare insisted, while the light from her was rapidly fading. Ironjaw nodded to the unicorns, and the sphere popped open like a soap bubble.
"So, what do you think, Gruff?"
Berrywing asked the unicorn stallion sitting next to her.
"She's tough, but I knew that even before you threw her into that training. She's also getting stronger. If that goes on, one of your soldiers might actually die next time."
Gruff analyzed the video of the last training session he had just seen. The mare beside him just waved a dismissive hoof.
"Nah, she's not a killer. Yet. Silver Cross will have to get that kind of killer instinct if she wants to really have a chance against the kind of ancient evil she claims we are facing,"
Barry said, yawning.
"Could you beat her?"
I doubt it, actually. Before she started training with the soldiers and ICE agents, maybe. But right now I don't think I would last a single round if it came to that."
"And that from the first mare who graduated from the Canterlot Military Academy since the legendary Dancing Cross,"
Gruff mused, putting a hoof on the elder's shoulder. She brushed it off with one of her wings.
"We are not in high school anymore, Gruff. As much as I wish we were,"
she said, looking at him with sadness in her eyes. The superintendent sighed heavily, standing up to leave.
"Maybe we could be like that again, if you just finally saw reason, Barry,"
the stallion said before leaving the observation room. Unseen by him, tears fell from the Pegasus mare's face at that. I was hurting a little due to frostbite, even though the training session had been hours ago. Right now I was accompanied by ICE Agent B3 and Q88. I had overheard the two of them talking about a prisoner and had demanded that they brought me to her. I had expected many things, but not what I actually saw when we entered the small observation room next to the interrogation room. On a chair in the middle of the room sat a very familiar light blue unicorn mare. Her face looked like she had been beaten over and over. I saw the streaks of tears that flowed down her face and dried. Her cracked lips were not moving, and the chair she was sitting on was stained by her own excrements. ICE interrogation techniques. I had only heard about them before, when ponies whispered about them, but to see them first hoof. A mare, dressed like all the other ICE agents in this facility, entered the room, a whip floating in her magic. Before even I knew I was going to do it, I turned around and backed at the two-way mirror that separated this room from the interrogation chamber. The agent inside, as well as my escorts, turned to face me. I imagined that her eyes went wide behind that mask, but I couldn't have cared less as I jumped through the newly formed opening. My left foreleg connected with the mare's face head-on, cracking her mask. She was knocked back through the closed door she had entered from. The only sound she made, before hitting the wall of the corridor outside, was a pained yelp.
"While I'm in charge, you do not, I repeat, you do not torture ponies!"
I screamed at the two ICE agents who had escorted me here. Outside, some passers-by were already tending to the unconscious mare. They didn't dare to speak back to me, or even approach me for that matter, as I trotted over to Sweethoof to untie her. She shook violently as the rope holding her to the chair fell away. Her body followed only a moment later as she almost face-planted into her own filth that had formed a small pool under the chair. Only me catching her prevented her from doing so. I pulled the mare to a corner of the room that was free of glass shards and excrements and propped her up against the wall. The two ICE agents, B3 and Q88, were staring at me quizzically.
"Don't you just stand there! Get a doctor!"
I screamed before unfastening the canteen from the uniform they had given me and bringing it up to Sweethoof's lips. Immediately she began to gulp down the water greedily as if she hadn't been given any in several days. As soon as she had emptied my canteen, she began to vomit violently on me. It was a very strange sight to see this proud mare who had not missed a chance to bully me ever since I had started my work at the yard, laying helplessly in my hoofs, crying and vomiting non-stop. She pressed her face against my chest, her eyes closed, and started to thank me over and over and over again. Only a few apologies were thrown in here and there. When the doctors came and took her away, I just knew I would have some very harsh words with Council Elder Berrywing about her methods. I sat next to Sweethoof in the hospital wing of the facility under Canterlot while machines next to the bed were beeping, indicating her heartbeat, breathing and brain activity. It had been a long while since I had been close to her for more than 5 minutes without her throwing insults at me. Those times had been long ago. In the summer I came to Canterlot to work as a policeman at the local police station. Sweethoof had been my very first case and later one of my co-workers at the CPD. We had worked on a few cases together even though we had worked in different divisions. Then, when Frostmane had encouraged me to take the yard's entrance exam, Sweethoof took it with me. The test was easy enough, 3 stages. First had been a written exam, then came a fake murder case which we had to solve with only a minimum of clues. The last exam, however, had been the real killing blow for our friendship. A yard inspector needed to be able to defend him or herself, so the examiners had put us into fights against each other. During the cases we had worked on together, Sweethoof had never entered a bar brawl or subdued any pony. That had always been my job. When we pitched against each other in the weaponless combat, the outcome was decided before the fight had even started. Sweethoof, the mare who had grown up in Canterlot and had never been in a single fight, against a pony who had beaten up her big, 16-year-old brother when she was only 6 years old. The actual fight had been quick and decisive, me hitting my former friend's horn once to break her focus before I jumped on her back and subdued her with a horn ring and cuffs. Our relationship had never been the same after that. The Blue Unicorn had been so sure that she would get through the exam that she had quit her job at the CPD before taking the exam, something I had warned her not to do in case she failed. Then when she actually had failed, she had been without a job and the CPD didn't want her back due to the way she had resigned. That was when Superintendent Gruff Tone had offered her the job as his private secretary. Sweet had taken it, but couldn't pass me without a snide comment ever since. She blamed me for her failing the exam, but I think that, deep down, she knew I wasn't the real cause. Right now she was unconscious, tubes and wires connected to her body in multiple places. I knew some of the tubes were injecting her with painkillers, and I also knew that she probably needed them. I had seen her hindquarters when they had cleaned her, and they didn't look good. Her coat just under her tail was gone, and all I had seen was raw flesh. Before standing up to go and talk with Berrywing, I dug around in a pocket of my uniform. Out came my good luck charm, my old badge from the Canterlot Police Department, Homicide Division. The only bullet Sweethoof had ever fired, as far as I knew, was still stuck in the middle of it. She had tried to help me when I was wrestling with a drug dealer, but her aim had been more than poor. Had it not been for my badge, the bullet would have gone straight through my heart. Now I put the chain of the badge around her neck and placed the badge itself on one of her hoofs. She might not have considered me a friend anymore, but I wanted her to at least remember the good times we had together.
This is unacceptable. You wanted me to be the head of this office, yet you don't inform me that a mare has been caught and interrogated for a week. Am I just some kind of figurehead for you, or do you actually want to support me against the nightmare?
I asked angrily while pacing up and down in front of Barry's desk. She had her front knees on the desk, tapping her hoofs together rhythmically.
I'm sorry about that. I didn't know about it until yesterday either. You must understand that I'm here to keep an eye on you and not in my function as council elder. The ICE agents do not owe me any explanations, nor do they have to report to me. The only mistake they made here is that they did not report it to you. This is a yard operation and you are the man in charge, so they should have reported it to you.
Barry sighed, stopping to tap her hoofs together and beginning to rub her temples.
And what about those methods? She barely got enough food and water to survive this ordeal, and her body is a total mess. When I stepped in, a mayor was about to use a whip on her. We are not in the Dark Ages, Barry. We are better than that.
I shouted. The Pegasus man nodded at me from behind her desk.
You are right, of course, and I won't argue that point. Yet you must also understand that the ICE is an organization that doesn't usually deal with equestrian civilians. They usually interrogate prisoners of war or dangerous political ones. They are extreme, yes, but sometimes we have to take extreme measures to succeed in whatever we do. However, I'm sure Gruff will be happy to get his secretary back.
Barry said seriously. I pondered that for a moment before deciding.
No.
No?
That's what I said. The superintendent will have to pull through without his secretary for a while. I want her,
I said, remembering how smart Sweetooth could be when analyzing clues on a crime scene. Barry didn't seem at all surprised at that as she pulled out a folder from one of her desk drawers with her teeth.
Kind of thought you might said that. I have her service record right here. She's an exceptional analyst, but failed the entrance exam to the yard when she utterly lost to you. I can make arrangements to remedy that, but are you sure you don't just want to do this to make you feel better?
She asked with a worried frown on her face. I thought for a moment, then nodded.
I'm as sure as I can be. I mean, your ICE agents might be good, but I doubt any of them has her mind.
I asserted, to which Barry grinned.
Well then, I guess you have. Hey, what's wrong?
The lavender Pegasus mare in front of me asked, the shock evident in her voice. I had fallen down to one of my knees, my vision swimming in front of me. My cross was suddenly burning hot and as heavy as a mountain. There was no time for me to answer Barry's question before I fainted and my face hit a surprisingly soft forest floor. My daze lasted for only a second before a deafening roar shook me out of it. My vision was blurry, so I couldn't exactly see what was happening around me, but that wasn't necessary either. The ground under me got torn apart by a blinding flash of lavender light. It would have engulfed me too had it not been for some pony biting down on my mane and pulling me out of harm's way. It hurt quite a bit to be yanked away by my mane, but that wasn't even the worst of it. Instead of setting me down on my hoofs so I could run away from the scene for myself, my savior started to gallop with my mane still in her teeth. The indignity of being carried by my mane like a kitten was far worse than the pain. I tried to communicate that to the pony carrying me, but she didn't answer. You may ask yourselves now how I knew it was a mare who was carrying me. The answer to that is pretty simple. I may not be tall, nor very heavy for an earth pony, but I'm not lightweight either. Add to that I was smelling mare sweat and you have your answer. My vision began to clear about 5 minutes of this, and I could see the mare carrying me for the first time. Her multi-hued mane and tail flew out behind her while she galloped around trees and changing her direction unpredictably to avoid being hit by the blasts of lavender magical energy that came after us. I could only agree with her. There was no way I wanted to be hit by one of them. Seeing how much damage they caused when they hit the ground or the trees was enough to convince me of that. A tree about 8 hoofs thick and 100 hoofs high got hit behind us. It turned to ash in less than a second, filling the air with the smell of burnt wood and smoke. I gulped hard. For a moment I wondered if I would even feel it if I got hit by one of them. After about half an hour of heavy galloping, we seemed to have finally lost our attacker for the time being. The mare that was carrying me was taller than an average pony, which made it even more uncomfortable as she dropped me unceremoniously onto the rocky floor of the cave she had run into. After rubbing my poor backside with a hoof, I looked up at her stern face, and recoiled instantly. While she had been carrying me, I had only been able to see the right side of her body due to the angle she was holding me in. Now I saw the horrible injuries that lined her left side. Her left eye was dead, its pupil having turned silver. All of the fur and the feathers of her left wing were gone, looking as if they had been burned away a long time ago. Indeed, her left side was one giant scar. She seemed to be uncomfortable with my staring gaze, for she turned away from me so I could only see her right side, which was virtually unscathed. I must admit that it is a pleasure to finally meet some pony who is not after my life, but I have to wonder why you are here, Silver Cross. The mare said sternly, while sweat ran down her body. The sad note in her voice made my heart ache. I had a very good idea who this alicorn was, but my voice failed me. I see. You know who I am then, my little pony? She asked, chuckling sadly at the last few words. Finally, the lump in my throat seemed to ease and I could speak again. You are either Celestia or Cadence, I said weakly, getting to my hoofs to get closer to her. A strong shove from her magic prevented me to do so, however, and I was forced to sit on my tail again. Sighing, she began to explain. My name is Celestia. I guess it's only Celestia these days. I know who you are, for I was the one creating your soul and the cross you wear around your neck. I can only assume that it sensed that I was in danger and brought you here to help me. That shouldn't have happened. It should only bring you to the other bearers, not to us. Celestia sighed again, looking up at the ceiling of the cave with a mournful expression on her face. But where are the other two, Cadence and Luna? Why aren't they helping you? And what about Twilight Sparkle? I asked, and immediately knew that I had said something wrong. The mare's face hardened at the name of the prophet, and she turned towards me with a look on her face that made me fear instant incineration for some reason. We split up centuries ago. It's safer that way. Luna and Cadence are hiding themselves somewhere while I deal with Twilight and the Nightmare on my own. They didn't want to, but I can be very persuasive if I have to be. You might or might not have guessed that the one attacking us was Twilight. The Nightmare got hold of her after Broken Cross found her cross. You see, we are your anchor against its control and vice versa. As long as the bearers do not fall, she cannot control us. As long as we do not fall, she cannot control you. It seemed like a good idea at the time. The only problem was that, after Twilight's bearer found her cross, her insanity spread to Twilight. All of her memories have been altered, and she is now under the impression that I am the Nightmare and that I killed Princess Celestia, which is completely ludicrous since I am Celestia, but since she loves me like a mother. A tear ran down her cheek, and I could suddenly imagine what had happened to her. You love her too, don't you? I asked softly, to which she nodded. And it was her who hurt you so? Another nod. Is there any way we could, help her? I asked, tilting my head a bit. Celestia seemed to ponder that for a moment before answering me. There is a way, and I have attempted it a few times in the past, but every time I lost heart halfway through the procedure, she said, her head lowered. When I asked her what had to be done, Celestia elaborated. There are only 3 ways. The first one would be to kill her. Her soul would be set free, and since we are in the realm of the dead already, she should be able to join our cause again. The only problem would be that it would also sever the connection to her cross, and all 4 are needed to defeat the Nightmare. The second way would be to let her kill me to break the mind control the Nightmare has placed on her. The problem with that would be that my connection to my cross would be severed, and the resulting shock may as well destroy Twilight. No, the third option is the only viable one, but I cannot do it, for I cannot leave this place. What is the third option? Kill Broken Cross. She would be set free, and the mind control on Twilight would lift. She could then assist you in your fight against the Nightmare. Celestia explained. I didn't like that one bit. I had fought Broken before, and I knew what she was capable of. Even though I had some fancy new powers now, I was pretty sure that it would be a close call. My brother in destiny was fast, strong, and much more experienced than me, even though I was training with soldiers lately. Celestia, even though we were in the cave for about 20 minutes already, still looked like she was ready to collapse. An idea struck me. Maybe it wouldn't solve this whole mess, but it would at least give her some time to properly rest up and maybe even heal a few of her wounds.
When was the last time you slept or ate something?
I asked, looking intently at her face, looking for any sign of a lie. In the end, I didn't need to look for any subtle signs, because she turned her head away before answering me.
About a month ago,
she said weakly, and I had to admit that I was impressed. I wouldn't have been able to go on without anything to eat or some rest for that long. And she had been doing this for thousands of years by now. She deserved a little respite. Confidently puffing out my chest, I stood up and made my way towards the cave's entrance.
"Wait, what do you think you're doing?"
Celestia called out before I had stepped out of the cave.
"You go ahead and rest. I'll take care of Twilight Sparkle for a while,"
I responded with a smile on my face. The Alicorn tried to argue with me, but I wouldn't have any of it. In the end she relented, withdrew further into the cave, and lay down. I'd faced Broken Cross in combat before, had tussled with Pain Train even before I got my cross, and beat one of the Nightmare's generals into a pulp. How hard could it be to keep an Alicorn, the weakest of the four no less, busy for a few hours?
"Horse apples, that was close!"
I exclaimed as I cartwheeled away from the blade of magical energy that erupted from the horn of Twilight Sparkle. She looked crazed. Her eyes were glowing distinctly green, and she didn't even seem to feel the gash I had inflicted on the right side of her barrel with Luna's sword. It was crazy. According to what Celestia had said, she had been hunting her non-stop for about a month, and she was still faster and stronger than me. 8 times her magical blade had missed me by mere inches, one of her swipes cutting my tail off as I jumped aside. Even with the speed enhancement I got from Luna, she was still faster than me. Her lavender blade came down from above, and I summoned Luna's sword once again, blocking her blow with my own blade. My teeth were hurting as the hilt of the weapon got pressed further into my muzzle by the sheer force of the attack. Tilting my head to the right, I directed her magical blade into the ground, causing it to cut another deep hole into the forest floor. This time, however, she scraped my right foreleg before hitting the ground. I felt my hoof being split in two, as if it was made out of paper, as blood began to pour from it. It took all of my willpower to suppress a scream. Had I screamed, I was sure Celestia would have come running. That 1 second I needed to compose myself was enough for Twilight Sparkle to go onto the offensive again. She changed her approach though, not going for strong but fast slashes this time. With my injured foreleg, I was at a disadvantage in speed and footing, making it almost impossible for me to deflect her blows. All I could do was preventing her from decapitating me outright. It was then that my temper rose. I had just stepped onto my injured hoof, causing adrenaline to course through my body. It may have also had something to do with my fear of impending death, but I met her next charge head-on. Her magical blade came down from above again, and I met it with Luna's blade once more. Only this time I didn't hold it horizontally, like my fencing teacher had taught me, but vertically for a counterattack. While Twilight's magical blade cut off my right ear, my sword slid down her blade and into her horn. The lavender blade evaporated instantly as the Alicorn in front of me began to thrash in utter agony. This pain seemed to be enough to cut through her crazed brain. Blood flowed down her face as she screamed curses at me in a language that I didn't understand, shaking her head all the while. I used the chance presented to me and tackled her to the ground. From what Celestia told me, I knew that I wasn't allowed to kill her, but if I hurt her badly enough, it might give the other mare more time to recuperate. Raising my blade while pressing the struggling mare under me to the ground with my left foreleg, I completely missed the flash of green light to my right that was shortly followed by a flash of gold. A muffled cough finally made me aware of the 2 others that had surely teleported here only seconds before. Celestia stood to my right, a blade sticking out of her chest. The hilt of the sword was enveloped in a green magical aura that belonged to Broken Cross. I could see blood dripping from Celestia's muzzle as she struggled to breathe. Another cough, accompanied by a pained outcry and a spurt of blood coming from her muzzle, followed when Broken Cross twisted the sword and pulled it out. To this day, I do not know why I did it, but I kicked Twilight Sparkle in the face, hitting her already split horn and breaking off a good portion of it. Then I lunged forward, trying to catch the collapsing Alicorn mare while holding my cross in my muzzle. I pressed it against her flank as she fell, and a golden light seemed to seep from her body into the cross before a white flash of light blinded me. We reappeared in the infirmary of the Department of Changeling Affairs under the Trottland Yard building. Celestia had, funnily enough, been transported here with me, but there was nothing the doctors could do for her. She had already stopped breathing and her heart had stopped when they got her hooked up to one of the monitors. They had wanted to take care of me first, but I had insisted on them having a look at her before they bothered helping me. Reanimation was unsuccessful and the doctors gave up after about 5 minutes. An examination of the corpse later revealed that the blade had pierced her heart. After a tedious debriefing with Berrywing and being worked on by the doctors for a while, Sweet Potato dropped in to see me. All she did was bob my nose with one of her wings and lay down on my back before falling asleep. I didn't think I would get to sleep that night until I heard a voice in my mind that belonged to a mare I had seen being killed recently. "We have a lot to talk about, my little pony.